Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I am going to do a bit of a recommendation video. I was recently tagged in a video by my good friend and fellow YouTuber, JT at the Movies, and he did a video where he recommended a few movies for people to watch, and yeah, he tagged some people to do their own video, and I was one of the people he tagged. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you 5 movies that I would like to recommend to people. The first 4 are not the most well-known films, so I'm hoping with me recommending them, they may potentially find new audiences. My last choice is a very well-known film, and I'm sure a lot of people have probably seen it. But I just wanted to sort of reiterate why I love it and why I would still recommend it. But yeah, we'll just get started, and I'll start with my first choice. Right, so the first movie that I'm going to recommend is a movie that came out in the 1990s, and this is a serial killer thriller. Now, I like to think that I'm fairly clued up on my serial killer thrillers and thrillers in general from the 90s. If I've not seen them, I've at the very least heard of them. But this is one movie I had never heard of. I'd never heard people talk about it. I'd never seen the trailer or the poster or anything like that. So it came as quite a surprise when I did discover this film. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, and I will get into that in a minute. But it's still a very, very solid thriller from the 1990s. But anyway, the film in question is Switchback from 1997. So like I said, this is a serial killer thriller. It boasts a brilliant cast. You've got Dennis Quaid, you've got Danny Glover, you've got Jared Leto, you've got Ted Levin, you've got R. Lee Ermey in there. So really strong cast. And in the film, it stars Dennis Quaid. He plays this FBI agent, and his young son is kidnapped at the beginning of the film. And he is sort of investigating what has happened, but he's taken off the investigation, obviously, because of, how personal the case is to him. And all at the same time, there's a few murders that have occurred in and around the state of Texas. And so the local law enforcement are investigating that. But Dennis Quaid's character ends up joining up with the investigation because he strongly suspects that the kidnapping of his son and these murders are connected, and it all kind of unravels from there. Yeah, it's a very, very solid film. Like I said, it's not perfect. I don't think there are certain plot elements that don't quite land as well as they should, but it's a very well made, well acted serial killer thriller. It's got some good moments. It builds to a good action sequence on a train. It's photographed very well. It uses a lot of the mountainous regions, the snowy regions of America really well. And like I said, it's just got a really good cast. I think the standout for me is Danny Glover. He plays very much against type in this film. I think we all probably know him for law enforcement type roles, obviously with Lethal Weapon and Predator 2, but yeah, he plays a very, very different type of character in this film. So yeah, I just thought I would recommend that one because I don't see it talked about very much. I really enjoyed it, and I think if 90s thrillers are your thing, then this is definitely one to check out. So yeah, that's my first choice, and that is Switchback. Right, so for my number 2 recommendation, I'm going to go with a martial arts movie starring Jet Li. Now, I've kind of come to a realization that I'm not the biggest fan of Jet Li. I'm not the biggest fan of his brand of action. I think a lot of his films, the action scenes and the fight scenes tend to be a bit too silly for my liking. There's a lot of wire work. There's a lot of stunts that are very unrealistic and kind of defy the laws of gravity. But this is one film from his filmography where the action and the fight scenes, for use of a better word, feel a lot more grounded and a lot more realistic. And this is one of his films that he made whilst he was in Hollywood. And the film is Kiss of the Dragon from 2001. So yeah, in this film, Jet Li plays he plays this Chinese police officer who was sent to Paris to apprehend this Chinese mob boss who has sort of ran away to Paris and gone into hiding. And when he gets there and tries to apprehend him, he ends up getting framed for a murder, and he finds himself being chased by not only the police but also the mob that he was involved with taking down. And he ends up joining forces with another character played by Bridget Fonda. She plays this prostitute who just happens to be employed under the same mob that Jet Li is fighting against, and the two kind of join together to help each other out. And what I love about this film is it is a brilliant action film and highly underrated. Once the action starts within the first 10 minutes, it never really stops, and it is just relentless all the way through. And it's just a great action movie that I like to put on every now and then when I fancy a bit of action, but I fancy something a little bit different. I think even if you don't like martial arts, I think there's still a lot to enjoy with this film. It actually feels very much like a John Wick film. It was obviously released quite a few years before John Wick. Certain elements of the film haven't aged that well. I mean, it was released in 2001, so it was a weird period for films. Like the use of music, the editing choices, some of the CGI, it doesn't date the film very well. But if you can kind of get over that, there's just some great fun to be had with this film. Jet Li is fantastic in it. There's some great fight scenes and some great action scenes. And yeah, just a really enjoyable action movie. So that is my number 2 pick, and that is Kiss of the Dragon. Right, so for my third recommendation, I'm going to go with a Hammer horror film. And this is a Hammer horror film which maybe isn't as well known as, your Draculas, your Frankensteins, The Mummy, all those sorts of films. But this is one that I think is very underrated and one of my personal favourites. And it is Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. So yeah, kind of like a different spin on the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, which is obviously very well known and has been adapted many times, not only by Hammer, but also many other studios. But in this film, stars Ralph Bates, and he plays this scientist, and he starts to come to a realization that all of his experiments, he's never going to be able to finish them, and one of his colleagues even quips that he'll never be able to finish them before he dies. And he kind of takes this to heart, and he starts to look into how he can prolong his life and how he can essentially find the elixir of life. And he comes to the realization that because women tend to live longer than men, he thinks the solution is with women. So he starts extracting hormones from female cadavers that have been used for medical study. And he creates this serum that he injects himself with, and he essentially becomes Sister Hyde. He becomes a female version of himself, who is played brilliantly by Martine Beswick. And then it becomes that typical sort of story where the two personalities start to clash, and they want to gain dominance over the other one. But I just think this film is really, really well done, well made, well acted. And it may not be the scariest Hammer horror film, but it's just one that is thoroughly entertaining, brings in all those elements from, sort of 19th century England, Jack the Ripper, the Burke and Hare killings, all of that comes into it as well. So it's just a thoroughly entertaining Hammer horror film, and one that I think is very underrated. So yeah, that is my third recommendation, and that is Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Right, so for my fourth recommendation, I'm going to go with another horror film. This one came out in the late 80s. And again, this was a film I hadn't ever really heard of until quite recently, but I was won over by the positive reviews and the strong cult following that this film has. And the film is I, Madman from 1989. So it's kind of like a low-budget horror from the late 80s, but it's about this woman who is she works at this bookstore. She's very into her reading, and she discovers this book called I, Madman. And the book itself is about this serial killer that is killing people in very brutal fashion. But she starts to come to the realization that the killings are happening in real life. And she then starts to see visions of the killer, of how it's described in the book that she's reading. And it becomes that classic story where she's seeing all these visions, she's witnessing these murders, but no one else around her believes her story. And it kind of just goes from there. But what I really like about this film is it kind of mixes almost like Hammer horror or like Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera with this film noir sort of feel. And I think it mixes the two genres quite well, and it has a very strong sort of visual style. The story is nothing new. We've seen it a lot before, but I think it's a very, very enjoyable horror film from the late 80s, and one that doesn't really seem to get talked about all that much, but one that I really enjoyed. Is it a perfect film? No, but it's a very enjoyable horror film nonetheless. So that is my fourth recommendation, and that is I, Madman. Right, so on to my fifth and my last recommendation. And like I said earlier, this is a film that is very well known, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this movie. But it's a movie that every time I watch it, it just gets better and better and better for me. And it's been a personal favourite of mine for a long time. And it is 1968's Planet of the Apes, so the original Planet of the Apes film based on the novel that came out in 1963. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this film, but if you haven't, it's about these three astronauts that are traveling through space. Their spaceship crashes on a planet, and they very soon discover that the planet is dominated by apes, and they are the dominant species, and humans have kind of regressed into being the dumb animal type of creatures. And Taylor is sort of he is taken captive by the apes, but it becomes this film about him trying to assert that, you know, that men and apes, there is a difference, and that apes were not necessarily the dominant species, and becomes this struggle between the intellectual apes and Taylor's character. But it's just got so much going on in it. I love the music in it. I love the way it's shot, the use of locations, the cast. You've got Charlton Heston, you've got Roddy McDowall, Kim Hunter, and a whole host of other great people in it. And it's just a brilliant film that is just pure sci-fi for me. And, you know, it just has that that shock value to it, you know, with the ending. But not only that, I would also recommend the rest of the films from the original Apes series, because I just think it's a very, very consistent, strong series of films. The sequels may not be as good as the first one, but they're still really enjoyable in their own right. But one thing that kind of shocks me these days is I always hear a lot of people say that they've seen the later Planet of the Apes films, but they've never seen the original, and that really blows my mind. For me, like, you know, a lot of the other Apes films are great, but nothing holds a candle to the original film, in my opinion. And it's just one of those films that every film fan needs to see. And yeah, I just can't speak highly of it. I forgot to mention the makeup as well. You know, for 1968, the makeup in this film, the ape makeup, is just out of this world, really. Yeah, I could talk for hours on this film, but if you haven't seen the original Planet of the Apes, definitely watch it. But I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen it anyway, but I would still recommend it as my fifth choice. So yeah, that is the original Planet of the Apes. So there you go, guys. Those are 5 movie recommendations from myself. Thanks again to JT at the Movies for tagging me to do a response video. Had a lot of fun doing this one. It was fun to sort of put some thought into what movies I should recommend. I guess I should do my own tag. So I think what I will do is I will tag Scott the Movie Critic. I'll tag Pete, Playtendo Guy. I'll tag Nige, Rock God 2004, and I will tag Mike, the other retro guy. Don't feel obliged to do your own videos. If it's not for you, that's fine. But anyone else watching, if you would like to do your own video, then please feel free. It'd be great to see more people doing this. But for anyone who doesn't want to do a video, but they'd like to maybe let me know in the comments of any movie recommendations, that would be great as well. So yeah, I'll leave the video there, guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you all again on the next one. So take care.